You started growing up with this awful abuse. Was there any physical abuse as well, or was it just mental?
I was a punch bag. My mother was a narcissist. She was constantly saying to me, I wish you'd have died at birth. You're not normal. Why can't you be normal like the other kids?
How long was you in this awful narcissistic relationship with this guy then?
5 years. It came to the final straw when he beat me up. I've just been beaten up. I'm not going to stay here. And she's like, well, you made your bed, you lie in it, you don't get divorced.
There's a property element. How did we kind of end up going in that direction?
I've always had that burning desire about property. One of my big goals is to have some houses that are available for women fleeing domestic violent relationships who've got nowhere to go.
Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Airbnb Nomads podcast. And on this week's Property Education Masterclass, we are joined by the absolutely incredible Brooke Bownes. We're going to mix things up just a little bit this week, and we're going to lean a lot more heavily into the massively important and under-discussed topic all around mental health. Brooke's going to be talking about how from the very minute she was basically born, she started to experience abuse and narcissism through her mother, believe it or not, and then how that gave her all of the understandable struggles and challenges along with self-confidence, low self-esteem into her adulthood, but how she broke through that, and now she has created her best life through helping other people to recognize the traits of narcissism, to recognize the traits of abuse, and to show these people how they can become their best selves by breaking through that toxic darkness and going on to achieve incredible things. I can resonate with every single part that's in this episode. Brooke's story is absolutely amazing, and I'm passionate about it because I know that there are so many people out there this very second who are experiencing the same darkness that I've been through, that Brooke went through, and how so many people are feeling today. So if this is you, you need to listen to this whole episode. If you get knowledge, if you get power, if you get strength from this episode, I would ask that you please go and follow the show. Please leave us a review. It serves us and helps us more than I can possibly explain, and allows us to continue giving knowledge, help, support, and content to our community. Until that point, guys, grab a cuppa, get comfortable. This is an amazing episode that will light a fire inside of you and help you realize that you deserve more. Settle in and enjoy. I can't wait for you to hear it. Here we go. Hey Brooke, welcome to the podcast. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm looking forward to having a chat with you.
I'm looking forward to this one a lot. And the reason why that is because, as our listeners will know, this podcast is very heavily geared towards property and people's successes and where they are. A lot of those people that I speak to have come from a place of hardship, right? And I generally tend to tell the story from where they were to where they are today and all the juicy stuff in between. Now, the reason why I'm excited to have you on, Brooke, and what we've kind of touched on very, very briefly on the lead up to this podcast, is that you admittedly have had some hardships in life, right? We're going to talk about the relationships with your mother, how that was kind of heavily affected around narcissism, something that I've experienced quite recently. And we touched on that as well, didn't we, just briefly before we came together today. And I love talking about this stuff because it shows vulnerability, it shows truth, it shows determination, it shows struggles, it shows hardship, it shows all of these challenges that so many of us have in life. And then it shows how you've overcome it and now where you are today. So I love the fact that we're going to get into it. I love the fact that you also said to me before we hit record, ask me anything you want. I'm an open book. I love to talk about this stuff because this is where you are now today. And hopefully what we're going to talk about is how you're now helping other people to transform their lives and come from challenging places to places of happiness and, success in all various areas. So it's absolutely awesome. And I know that our listeners and watchers are going to really get a lot from this. And I'm hoping that it's going to help to, turn a lot of people's lives around. So thanks so much for coming on. So Brooke, let's go back to the beginning. And I think that's where we kind of need to begin, right? Based on where you've been and what you've kind of experienced. So just tell us a little bit about you to begin with. Let's take it right back to the start.
Well, if you want to take it right back to the start, we'll go really right back to the start. I was actually born with a cord wrapped around my neck. which caused medical issues, which,
Yeah.
as you sort of like into that my mother was a narcissist. Well, to her, that wasn't good enough because I wasn't normal like the other kids, because the whole of my right side was affected and it was a lot weaker than my left. So I struggled to walk, and I was told that I may never walk. And if I did, I'll never ride a bike or run. And so she was constantly saying to me, oh, I wish you'd have died at birth. You're not normal. Why can't you be normal like the other kids? Nobody will ever love you. You'll never amount to anything. So I grew up hearing that on a day-to-day basis. And when I did learn to walk, I went back to the doctor, to the hospital, to see the consultant, and they were actually amazed that I didn't actually manage to learn to walk. And I was quite a determined little girl at the time. And he said, yeah, it's really great that you've learned to walk. We really are happy for you, but you're not going to be able to ride a bike. You're not going to be able to push the pedals around with your right leg, and you're not going to be able to hold the handlebar. And I can remember saying to them, with my hands on my hips, saying, I will, and I'll bring my bike in to show you. I thought, nobody's telling me I can't do anything.
Wow. So
went
you had
home.
you had that determination from such a young age that
Yeah.
this wasn't going to affect you.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So we went back home. I was all happy in the car, but I noticed that my mum had gone really quiet, and I thought, I'm in trouble, because I'd learned from a really early age to pick up the signals from her. And when we got back home, my dad went off to work. He was a farmer, went off to work. And she said, go get changed, because I had my best clothes on, obviously, to go to the hospital. And when I came out of the room, she absolutely went mad at me, physically and verbally abusive, saying, how dare you show me up in front of the doctors? How dare you tell him he was wrong, and that, all the things that he just said to you. And that was when I completely went like that and changed. I can remember cowering, kind of having my head in my hands, trying to protect my head, thinking, I just need to stay small and not speak out, because that's too dangerous. And that completely changed. I then turned into very unconfident, scared little girl with no self-worth at all. And I grew up hearing every day that I was ugly, worthless, and I'd never amount to anything, and nobody would ever love me. And she specifically said, do not speak about your medical issues, because people will run away from you. Nobody will want to be even your friend if they know you've got medical issues, because she didn't want anybody to know about it, because that would spoil her perception of a perfect family in her eyes.
Right. So have you got any siblings, Brooke, or are you an only child?
Yeah, no, I've got an older brother who's 4 years older than me.
So I'm interested to know, how did your mother treat you said your brother?
Yeah.
Right. Who presumably didn't have any complications at birth. Yeah. Was she different with him?
Yeah, he was what's called the golden child. But what's interesting now, even though we're going to kind of, he's now in his 60, he's now 60, and she's now turned on him and is giving him the abuse that she used to give me, because she's got nobody else in her life. And with a narcissist, they need some sort of supply. So she's now attacking my brother and my sister-in-law, which is like very strange for my brother, because he's been like the golden child all his life, so to speak.
So how has that affected his relationship with your mother? Are they now?
They don't speak. They haven't spoke for over a year now. They
don't speak, and I'm going to guess that you don't have the greatest relationship with your mother either, based on what you just said.
No. When I started healing and got to a stage where I started to respond to her words and things that she used to say to me, rather than react, and she couldn't get any kind of reaction out of me, she decided to cut me off and made up an elaborate story of why that she needed to cut me off out of her life. And I haven't spoke to her for about 12 years now.
So do you know now, obviously, you've gone through this huge journey, right? And you're now in a place of strength. But looking back, do you have any idea why she was like that, or why she treated you like that? I mean, I understand that you had the complications at birth, but obviously that's no excuse. That wasn't your fault. That was out of your control. And I don't quite understand why that would make her turn against you anyway. Is there any indicators, or is there any, looking back with hindsight?
Yeah, she had a really rough childhood, and her mother was a narcissist as well. So, and she was kind of like discarded as a child. And when she married my dad, all my dad ever wanted was a little girl, and I was like the apple of his eye. So there was a jealousy element, because my dad, absolutely adored me, and I adored my dad. So we had a really, really good relationship, and she didn't like that either. So she always used to say to me, oh, you're just a sport little brat, you know, you get anything out of your dad. And she didn't like the fact that I had a good relationship with my dad either, but it was because of like her childhood and her inner child wounds that she grew up with that created the narcissism in her, you know. And as we all know, if a narcissist isn't the center of attention, then, you know, they often have somebody to take it out on. And unfortunately, I was an emotional and physical punch bag as a child.
Yeah, I mean, as we get a little bit deeper here and as this thing progresses, I'd like to talk specifically about, you know, some of the traits of a narcissist, because I think, you know, from my own experience, having been in that situation, you can, and I'm sure that you can kind of, you know, sympathize with this. When you're in it and when you're experiencing it day to day, a lot of the time you don't recognize it, either because you don't know what narcissism is, or because the gaslighting that comes off the back of it, right, that beats you down every day, makes you start to believe that basically you're crazy and it's your fault and you're the reason why this person's so angry and annoyed with you. So I'd love to talk about some of the specific traits that involves, so that maybe we can help to educate some people out there today, right now, this minute, who are in relationships either with partners or family or business colleagues, right, who are being gaslighted and are experiencing narcissism, but don't maybe necessarily know or understand what it is. Because it's only after I'm now coming out the back of it and I'm now educating myself that I'm like, oh, ding, ding, ding. Yeah, there's all the telltale signs. So, okay, so you started growing up with this awful abuse. Was there any physical abuse as well, or was it just mental?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I was a punch bag. Whenever she was angry or upset, I got. But she was very clever with it, because she used to just do it when my dad wasn't there or my brother wasn't there, and then she'd say, if you tell them, then you'll get even worse the next time we're alone. So she was very calculating about it as well. And she would act like the perfect mother if we were out in public, you know. So people would never believe anything that I would say anyway to her. So she was very, very calculating with it as well, which is difficult for me, because nobody would believe me, and I was too scared to say anything to anybody as well, because I didn't want to get whatever worse was going to come the next time.
Well, and also you're a child, right? So you know, who's going to believe you over your mother, especially when she's playing such a good game in public in front of everybody else, right? Yeah. Playing the Little Miss Perfect game, which is terrible. So how did that affect your growing up through your teenage years and going into early adulthood? How long did it take you before you started to find this strength and start to realize what was going on here?
Well, I always thought that because I knew she had a rough childhood, and I thought, oh, she's obviously, you know, she's struggling, but I didn't know what narcissism was at the time. And then I ended up, when I was 15, I met a lad who was like 4 years older than me, and then I wanted to like get away from her as soon as possible. So we actually saved enough money, and I bought my first house at 18 and moved in with him, although I moved out when I was 16, as soon as I could move out of home to get away from her. But then discovered that he actually was a narcissist as well, and was very controlling. So I kind of jumped out the frying pan into the fire. Right. And after being married 3 months, he actually gave me whiplash and concussion, because he picked me up and threw me against the wardrobe so hard that my head ricocheted, gave me concussion and caused a whiplash.
But now let me ask you this, Brooke. I'm a little bit unsure whether to ask it, because it could kind of be a little bit offensive. But like you said, ask me anything.
No, go for it.
Right? Do you think that because of the way that you were treated by your mother, which no doubt and completely understandably obviously gave you self-esteem issues, self-confidence issues, right? All of this stuff that living or being with a narcissist creates inside of you or inside of the victim. Do you think that you was kind of putting off a certain vibe and you was attracting more narcissism into your life in some way, and that's why you ended up
absolutely
in that first relationship?
Because we people that have gone through, you know, traumatic childhood and had, especially that been with a narcissist, we are people pleasers, and we think we can help everybody, and you know, whatever it is that there is about us, it's like, okay, well, we're easily to manipulate and mold, because we've been manipulated and molded all of our lives. So, you know, and we're kind of just very, very vulnerable, and narcissism can pick us out in a lineup type thing. Like now the tables have turned, I can pick out a narcissism really easily in a lineup, and I wouldn't go near them. But yeah, because we're so vulnerable, and we just want to make sure everybody's happy and please everybody else, because we don't think about ourselves, because growing up we were never allowed to care about how we felt. It was always caring about how everybody else thought. I was constantly told, well, what will the neighbours think if you do that? What will the neighbours think? Which is a bit bizarre, because we lived on a farm and our nearest neighbours were like a mile down the road, which is the next farm. So we didn't technically have any neighbours. I used to think, well, we've got no neighbours to worry about, because she was very much into fashion and looking good, whereas I couldn't care less what I looked like, as long as I got a pair of jeans and a t-shirt on. I was a right tomboy, typical farmer's daughter. But she was all about appearances and how it all looked to the outside world.
So it's safe to say that narcissists definitely prey on empaths, right? They prey and they search out and they hunt for people who have big hearts, who want to help, who want to fix, who want to repair. And they prey on those people because they know that you are easily controlled, because you're going to keep coming back and you're going to keep trying and you're going to be persistent and you're going to try and always help that person. And then this is where you end up in the cycle, which we'll talk about a little bit. So how long was you in this awful narcissistic relationship with this guy then? How long did that last? 5
years. We were together 4.5, and we got married. And after like 3 months, when he actually beat me up, I had that kind of a bit of my determination. I was like, that's it, but then there was a whole saga of my mum getting everybody around, all of his family around, saying, you can't get divorced. We don't get divorced in our family. What will people think if you get divorced? You've made your bed, you need to lie in it. I'm like, I've just been beaten up. I'm not going to stay here. And she's like, well, you made your bed, you lie in it, you don't get divorced. And I ended up going to stay with a work colleague, because I'd got no friends, because he'd isolated all my friends from me. I ended up staying with a work colleague sharing a bedroom with his 6-year-old daughter, because I had nowhere else to go. But that was safer for me to be there than living in my own home.
And I know, let me just clarify this for people who are listening at home, because I know that there will be people who just listen to what you said when you said, 5 years and we got married, and they'll be jumping up and down saying, you idiot, why wouldn't you get out as soon as you saw the signs? But I can confirm, again, because I've been there, that when you're in a relationship like that, and I'm going to guess it was the same for you, you get 70% shit, right? So you get beaten on, you get abused, you get shouted at, you get controlled, manipulated, you're incredibly unhappy. But then there's that 30 or 35% of absolute bliss, right? Where you get love, you get affection, you get told that you're this and you're that, and you get beautiful meals cooked for you, and you get told you're the greatest, and it just sucks you back in, right? And that, at least for me, was the string, right? That kept me hanging on. And I think that's something that I'm hearing. Like I said, now that I'm educating myself on this stuff, it's the same thing over and over and over again. You get your heart ripped out, and you got one foot out the door, and then it's like, oh, no. And they pull you back in with the compliments and the love and the kisses. Yeah. So that's why, right? That's why you stuck around so long.
That their red flags were there looking back now. I mean, like, he taught me to drive, because I was desperate to learn to drive. I thought, once I passed my test, because we lived like on a farm miles out of town, and every time I made a mistake when I was learning to drive with him, he would lick his fingers and slap the back of my hand, and sometimes my hand would be red raw. And he'd say, yeah, but you won't forget that lesson now. You won't make that mistake again. I'm doing it to help you. I need to be cruel to be kind. And then when we did buy our first house, he lost his temper and stuck a knife in the worktop, and he stuck it in so hard when he tried to get it out, it actually busted off in the worktop. And he said, well, it's because I'm insecure, and because we're not married, and because of my childhood. If we got married, I'd feel secure and everything will be all right. Me being a naive 18-year-old, desperate for that love, thinking, oh, yeah, somebody wants to marry me. Somebody does love me. And obviously hearing in my background, my mum saying, nobody ever loved me. This man says he loves me enough to want to marry me. And, when you're 18-year-old and had that trauma that I've had, you don't want to even see the red flags, even if you know that, oh, my goodness, should I be doing this? Because you just, like you said, you're so desperate to have that love, and they reel you back in again. So he reeled me back in but it, like I said, it came to the final straw when he beat me up. It was like, okay, I've lived my childhood like this. I'm not going to do my adulthood life like this as well. I'm going to get out.
Yeah, and obviously, coming off the back of what you went through with your mother, you were like your radar. You were searching for anything that offered anything even remotely close to support, structure, love, companionship, safety, shelter. Right? You're seeking that. So you're like,
Yeah.
anything that comes along, you're going to grab onto that. Completely understand. So so then you got out of that. We're talking about 5 years or so. So we're getting into like your kind of early mid-20s, right? And you try, and then it's like, okay, what next? So what was your mental state of mind like exiting that awful relationship?
Well, I suddenly thought, hang on a minute, the common factor here is me. So if I stay the way I am, I'm going to be attracting more people like this. I need to work on my mindset. So I then went on a journey of like, right, I need to get a really strong mindset. I need to get this sorted out. And I met the father of my children, had 2 boys. And funny enough, I was talking about this earlier to somebody. I then got pregnant for the 3rd time and bumped into a friend of mine who hadn't seen me for a while, saying, and she made quite an innocent comment. She went, "Oh, you got 2 lovely boys. I bet you'd love a girl this time, wouldn't you?" And I suddenly went, "No, I don't. I'll be quite happy to have another boy because my mum didn't get on with me. And my mum didn't get on with her mother either. So I don't want to have a little girl because, what if we have the same sort of relationship as my mother and my grandmother had?" But no. But fortunately, I went on to have two more children, both girls, and they're 30 and 31 now, and they're like my best friends. I always feel quite choked up when I talk about that because I am the cycle breaker. I broke that cycle.
Right. That's awesome. And it reminds me of there's someone that I follow quite closely, one of these very famous speakers, and he talks a lot. It's not exactly the same, but it's kind of the same. He always stands on stage, and his father was an alcoholic, and he grew up in poverty, all the rest of it. And he talks a lot about he was the one in the family that changed the outcome and the course of direction for him and the rest of his family's life for generations and generations and generations. And you're the same.
Yeah.
You could have very easily carried on what you experienced into your daughters' lives, and then the cycle continues. But you didn't. So where did that initial kind of, mindset shift, how did that begin? You said, that you came out the marriage and you was like, okay, if I continue like this, I'm going to attract more problems and more narcissism. What kind of made you wake up to that realization?
I think sitting in a colleague, and they weren't really a really good friend. They were just a colleague at work, but they kind of saw what I'd gone through and said, like, come and stay with us. Sitting in a single bed, sharing a room with a 6-year-old, I thought I had quite a lot of time to think, and it was like, what am I doing with my life? Why am I having these sort of people in my life? Okay, I'm the one allowing this to happen. And it was like, okay, so if I can sort of change and be a bit stronger, maybe I won't attract these kind of people, because they it's like at school, the bullies won't pick on the strong kids. They'll pick on the ones that look a bit vulnerable. So I thought I need to stop being giving out that vulnerable kind of air about me and have a bit more boundaries.
Here's the challenge, Brooke. And boundaries. Great. I love that topic. We need that. But here's the challenge. When you are a nice, empathetic person, I think people can think, especially in the situation that you're describing, okay, I don't want to end up in that situation again. I've been with 2 people. I've been nice. I've offered them help. I've tried to love them, and they've used all that to turn it around, twist it up, thrown it in my face, and taken advantage because of how I am. So in order to stop that, I need to stop being such a nice person, right? And I need to start being a little bit more, like them, maybe. I think a lot of people might think that. So how do you avoid ended up in the same situation without changing your own personal characteristics of basically being just a really nice person?
It's a tough one, because my natural instinct is to want to help anybody else I can. I was known as like, go ask Brooke, she always says yes. And I would run around after other people doing everything they always want me to do, because I wanted people to love me. So I thought, okay, I need to like decide now that I'm going to be better off having no friends and just feeling safe in my life than having so-called friends who aren't really my friends and not feel safe in my life. So I kind of decided that, right, I'll end up going alone if I have to and having no friends. And it was interesting, the people that actually did care about me when I had started putting boundaries in place, they were cheering me, saying, yes, about time. And those that were actually benefiting from me having no boundaries kicked up, said I was selfish, I wasn't caring, and disappeared out of my life, and just dumped me as a friend. But
Yeah.
it's a great way, and I will say this to my clients: setting boundaries is a really great filter to find out who your real friends are and those that are just using you for what they can get out of you. And
You've
it's tough.
you got there before I said it. I was going to say the same thing. And again, you're obviously a hell of a lot more educated about this topic and general mental health, and that's what you do, right? And it's amazing. But from my own education now and research, that very specific topic was something that I was leaning into quite a lot recently. When you wake up and you're like, no, I can't keep saying yes, I can't keep giving, I need to put myself first sometimes, I need to set boundaries, right? You set the boundaries, and then that is, like you said, a great filter of people who either turn around and go, Brooke, awesome, love what you're doing, love that you're looking after yourself, I'm here if you need me, but I'm not going to ask for the world from you and expect it all the time. They're your keepers, right? And then you've got the other people who are like, well, F you, Brooke, and I called you and I need you and you weren't there and screw you. Get rid of them, right? And that is huge when you have that realization. I need to be careful here because I'm going to end up missing half the story because I love talking about this stuff so much. So let's move past that a little bit and tell me now. So tell me where we're at now, work wise. Are you starting to see a future, maybe how you can use these battles and turn it into maybe like a future, like career for yourself, or are we not quite there yet?
No. I've got the cliches. I turn my pain into my passion. I'm actually a coach and a therapist, and I help ambitious, mainly women, but I do help men as well, to heal their inner child wounds. Because I often get people say, I'm stuck, I'm too scared to do this, or too scared to do a Facebook Live, or too scared to venture out, and I don't know what's holding me back. And often it can relate to childhood. Now, people don't have to have a traumatic childhood like I've had for them to have those inner child wounds. We've talked about my book. I talk about a client in there who a teacher said to her as a child at 7, you're useless at maths, and that one sentence affected her until she was in her 50s. So sometimes it can be just one sentence that somebody will say without kind of thinking about it, a throwaway comment that can affect you until you actually deal with that and process it.
Yeah, and when you get to the point, it's interesting. You don't know that you're being affected by that one line that happened when you were 6. Hopefully you get to a point when you're like, okay, I need some help here, whether it's therapy or, work with a mentor or whatever to help pull it out of you. And I've had this before when I've had therapy, and I'm sitting there and the therapist is like probing and picking and digging. And all of a sudden I'll say something and it's like, you just, all your emotions come out and you start crying and breaking down, and you don't even know even then why you're doing it. And then it's like, ding, let's dig into that now. So that's why it is quite a painful situation or procedure to go through, but it's definitely necessary.
Yeah, and I had that myself. I had a big fear of doing Facebook Lives, and I would procrastinate and do anything I could, even to the point of, that kitchen drawer that's always a bit of a mess, with the odd pen top and paper. Yeah. I even tidied that out rather than do a Facebook Live.
A couple of elastic bands in there as well.
Because to me, people equal danger at the time, because when I spoke out as a child, I'd got into trouble. So, and how I work with people is we have like us as our true adult self, we have our inner child, and then we have things what I call protector parts. Now, procrastination is a protector part that shows up when our inner child isn't feeling good enough, worthy, lovable, or important. And I like to talk to people about, okay, if you can imagine your inner child is a bit like a puppet master. When he or she's really happy and feeling confident and wants to do things, she'll happily let you do whatever you want to do. But the minute she feels insecure or not safe, or he feels insecure or not safe, they'll pull those strings back, and you'll suddenly feel like you go, oh, can't do that, you know. And I've had clients come on to me and say, well, you know, come on a call with me and say, well, you know, how about do, oh, no, and they'll back in their chair like they're being pulled back, and it's because that inner child. But once we work out what that inner child is worried about and scared of, and deal with that, because our minds, we can logically, intelligently as an adult know, okay, we're quite safe to sit and do a Facebook Live. That's, you know, logically that's really, really safe. But our bodies, unless the trauma has been dealt with, will go back to that 5-6-year-old who's absolutely petrified of speaking out and saying anything. So we need to deal with the trauma that's actually trapped in the body, even if logically in our mind we know we could do a Facebook Live.
Yeah, I'm a big advocate for that, because it's quite a specific thing, right? We always, you know, I push our mentees very hard with, you know, being really, you know, out there on social media, very consistent with their lives, you know, building their brand and all that kind of stuff. And it's the same thing. I don't think I've worked with one of our mentees yet who, when I've said, right, guys, accountability, I want you to do a Facebook Live 3 days a week, and I want you to talk about this. Not one person who's gone, oh, yeah, no problem. It's always like, what?
Rabbit in the headlight, what?
rabbit in the headlights. And it's, but, you know, like anything, they do the first one, it's horrendous. The next couple, it's hard. And then, you know, slowly they're like, wow, this is actually pretty cool. And, you know, I'm not getting slated, and people are interested, and people are actually inspired. And then they start to, you know, then the momentum grows, and they start actually looking forward to doing it. So, you know, it's a pretty cool thing to do, to see people grow and come out of themselves. So what are you doing for work then at this point? Like back then, I know what you're doing now, but I know, because I know there's a property element, right, in your life. How did we kind of end up going in that direction?
Yeah, I've always loved being with property. Like I said, I was like when I was 18 or I was 17, I saved up, because 20p's had just come up. So I saved up £1,000 of 20p's, and
Wow.
I had to sit and wait till I was 18 to buy my first house, which is mad when you think about it now. It was £26,000 I paid for my first house, believe it or not.
Crazy.
But yeah, and then we I didn't add on the bit that I ended up with a second narcissist. I was a bit of a slow learner, because I'm still in the healing process, and I brought a property to do up, and needed doing up, and I did all the work myself. I, apart from the plumbing and the gas and electric, I put in a new kitchen, did all the tiling and everything, flipped it and made 20 grand. And he went, oh, thank you very much, I'm going to go buy myself a new car now, and kind of spent my profit. And I was like, well, I really want to use that to like, so I worked on myself a bit more and kind of put the property bit on hold. But I'm actually, although I do coaching and therapy, I've always had that burning desire about property. So I'm now kind of getting back into that, and want to sort of like, because one of my big goals is to have some houses that are available for women fleeing domestic violent relationships who've got nowhere to go. So I can help them out and sort of set up a charity that way. But that's something that I've always wanted to like do, that's going to be like in the next 5 to 10 years, hopefully. So yeah, it's something that I've always had a burning desire about, is property, and owning property, and renting it out and helping people out, and doing it up.
That sounds like a great goal, because, yeah, I mean, obviously a lot of people, you know, are in property purely for the financial gains. But if you can couple that with, you know, a charitable cause like that, where you're also solving, you know, a big problem for people, you know, like that, who are fleeing domestic abuse, then, you know, that's an absolute,
well, that was me. I had nowhere to go, and I ended up in a room with a 6-year-old, because I had absolutely nowhere else to go. But had there been some sort of charity to help me out back then, I'd have, you know, things would have been different. So, but you know, my life is what it is now, and thinking, okay, how can I pay it back and help other people? So.
And there are so many people. I'll tell you something that scares me, Brooke, is, and I think most people know this, but excuse me, there are so many people now in this world who got into relationships, and at the beginning it was all, you know, lovey-dovey and, you know, rainbows and butterflies. They make the commitment because things are good. The kids come along, the mortgage comes along, the responsibilities come along, and it all starts kind of, you know, changing and all becoming a little bit miserable and sad. And there are a lot of people now who are in situations or relationships with partners could be male, could be female, works both ways, who are experiencing narcissism, experiencing abuse, in whichever form it comes, or they're just incredibly unhappy and they're stuck, right? Or at least they think they're stuck. They're stuck
Yeah.
because of the bills, because of the kids. They don't want to break up the family. And do you know, I'm sure you do, and everybody else does, how many men and women are living that life where they are, taking the long way back from the station, or spending that extra 10 minutes sitting in the car on the driveway to avoid going in the house, or making an excuse to go and sit in the toilet, for 10 minutes and lock the door and just sit there, just to get that space and just to get that few minutes of just, to relax and to be alone. And I think that is so sad and scary, how many people are living like that, because they just feel trapped, right? And they don't quite know what to do. So what would you say to someone who's experienced in that life? Because I know right now there's people hearing those words that are like, yeah, that's me. I'm not happy. I don't know what to do. I want to make the break. I know I can do better. I know I can feel better. I know I'm not, this person isn't serving me and helping me to become my best self, but I just don't know what to do. I don't know how to get out. What would you suggest to those people?
Well, make sure that they get as much information and things sorted, like, have all their documents, that whatever they need for if they do decide to tell the other half. So, they've got all the things that they need, and look into where they can go and what they can do. Look into like renting somewhere, or look into like charity. There are charities out there as well, but really just think about, I'll stay with my partner until the children are a bit older. Actually, is that going to be doing the children any good, living in that kind of environment as well? And it's thinking about, what do you want as a person as well? Because it's your life. You don't have to live it the way that you don't want to live it. You can live it the way you want to. Yes, I chose to go and share a bedroom with a 6-year-old rather than stay in my own home, because I felt safer there. And it's like, the sense of peace and safety, no amount of money can make up for that. And it's having your own sense of self peace and self safety as well. Even if you are not living in the ideal situation that you like to live, yes, you may have to walk away from a beautiful home that you've built together and things like that. But at the end of the day, if you've got that sense of peace, no amount of money can make up for that.
And I think that, again, talking from my own experience, when you're in that place, when you're in that situation or in that relationship, especially when it goes on and it goes on and it goes on, and you're unhappy, that becomes life, right? That becomes your marker, right?
Your normality.
And your normality. And I remember, like, if we'd go out and we'd have a dinner and we laughed a couple of times and we didn't have a huge toxic argument on the way home, that was a win. That was like, hell yeah. That was like, shit. I'd go to bed that night. I'm like, damn, that was fun. I enjoyed that. That was really nice, But it wasn't that it was this incredibly exceptional night. It was just that we were normal, right? We weren't arguing. We weren't shouting and screaming. I wasn't packing my bags and walking down the street, with her chasing me in the car. So I guess I would say that without sounding too naive, but you only have one life, right? You've got to make it count. It's not dress rehearsal. And I know that I don't want to sit here and say, you got to go out and live your best life and you got to achieve this and do that. At this point, it's not about that. It's just about getting out and realizing that that's shit, right? And there's a lot of good things to experience. And when you meet someone who isn't like that, who does see the good in you and does see your abilities and does see your potential, right? And they start lifting you up and supporting you and doing nice things for you and appreciating the things you do for them, and all of that horrible toxic stuff goes away. When you get to that point, you're like, oh, this is what it's meant to be like. This is nice. This is really nice. Now I'm looking forward to coming home. But you've got to make the break first in order to go out and find that.
Which is scary, because it's like, especially if you've got youngsters. I mean, I've been homeless as well, so I know what it feels like. And you're thinking, but once you actually make that move, doors open where you don't always expect them or know where they're coming from. And like you said, you then start to live the life that you were meant to live. But yeah, it's not an easy thing to do. It's not a thing that you think, oh, well, yeah, I just fed up of sitting there watching telly with him or her the rest of my life, and I'm gonna like walk away from it, because it's emotionally, physically, and financially, a strain on somebody and the family. You don't know how the children are going to react. You've got to worry about those as well. But it is worth it in the end if you're not in a safe relationship.
And I would go as far to say, you will never achieve your potential in business, in happiness, life, whatever, if you are in a relationship that is not supportive. I put a post on my socials the other day about this, and now coming from what I went through and where I'm now, and being around people who, like I just said, are like, you can do it, Alex, and you got this, and whatever you need, and I'm going to help you however I can. That's when you achieve, right? That's when doors open, opportunities come along, people start noticing you, and you start radiating off a different kind of attitude and different vibe of confidence and growth and self-esteem, and I can do it, right? And then you start attracting that kind of stuff. But if you are with someone who makes you distance yourself from people, breaks down your family and friendships, right? Looks at you with that look whenever you pick up your phone to answer an important message, which is going to help you grow your business, all of that crap, you're never going to achieve and get to your best place if you're in that situation. It's impossible.
Yeah, and like I often say, and I put a post out the other day about it, we aren't responsible for what happened in our childhood, but we are responsible with what happens with us in our adulthood. We get to choose, and yeah. And I understand that people stay with their partners because they're trauma bonded. And like you said, they'll want to get out, and then suddenly they'll reel them back in and think, oh, okay, well, this is really nice. And they'll stay there for another year or so. And before they know it, 20 years has passed. But it's like thinking, do you want to spend the rest of your life living that way, living like looking over your shoulder, thinking, are they going to blow up at me? Are they going to, look at me and tell me off for like touching my phone or whatever it is that you want to do? And it's thinking about what role model are you being for your children as well, because our children learn so much more from watching us than they do what we actually say to them.
And I tell you when the light bulb really went off for me on all this stuff is, I come out of that, and I don't want to keep beating that relationship down. I loved that person more than I've ever loved anyone in my life, and that's why I stayed for so long, right? And I still love her very much, but I realized that in order for me to become my best self, I need to make change, right? And then when you meet someone who is the opposite, and they're like, you can do it, and I've got you, and whatever you need, like I just said. But I found myself, and I'm not in a relationship with this person, they're just a friend, but incredibly supportive. She's helping me grow massively in all areas of my life, and I'm so appreciative that she's in my life now in a friendship role. But I found that when I was doing the things that I was being beaten down for in this previous relationship, I would instantly do it and then look at her and go, oh, I'm sorry for, I'm sorry for just sending that message. Like, I know I'm meant to be spending time with you, but I just really needed to do that. And she'd look at me and go, why are you apologizing? I'd say, well, it's maybe a bit rude because we're having dinner and sorry I had to answer the message. And she's like, Alex, it's your job. Like, you got to reply to that. What are you talking about? And I'm like, shit, like I've been programmed now to feel bad.
The guilt
and
the shame.
Yeah. This, like the whole eggshell thing, right? Where you're like, oh, I don't know if I should, And so it's like, that was a big, like, wow moment for me. And I think that there's a lot of people that will also listen to that and go, yeah, I can relate. Brooke, tell me about your, I'm looking at the clock. It's like double speed here because I love talking about this stuff. Tell me about your homeless situation, because that's crazy.
Yeah, involves my mother again, so not surprisingly. The father of my children is an American, and we went over to America, but then we decided, because I got pregnant with my third child while we was in America before the 90 days insurance kicked in, and it was going to cost us like $4,000 back in 93 to have the baby over in America. So I said, nah, I'm going home. I'm done with this, thanks. So we decided to come home, and I said to my mum and dad, and my dad said, like, come and stay with us, when you land in England. So we stayed the one night, and I said to her, right, I said, we need to obviously find a place to rent. Can we stay with you for a couple of weeks until we can sort out the paperwork to rent a place? And she said, no. She said, that's not possible. She said, but I will dump you off at the council offices first thing tomorrow morning, and you'll have to work it out from there. So she basically drove. She said, I will do you the favour of driving you to the council offices, because we had no car, because we literally landed from America. So she dumped us at the council offices and said, there you go, they'll sort you out. So we ended up staying in a hostel where we had 2 rooms where we could lock the children in one room and us in the other, but we didn't. We kept all the children. So I was heavily pregnant with my daughter and got a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. And we ended up living in a hostel until we could actually sort out somewhere to live, because my mother said that we couldn't stay in their spare room, and they had plenty of room for us all to stay there, but she just wouldn't allow it to happen. She would rather dump us at the council door.
So is that because she saw basically that you were just getting on with your life? You now had your own family. You was this, you found this, and that was jealousy, right?
She hated my husband because he was an American, because she'd had lots of affairs in her life. She's quite an interesting character, to say the least. She'd had a lot of affairs while she'd been married to my dad, and she had an affair with an American, and she really toyed with the idea of actually running off to America with him, but she didn't have the guts, because my dad, she liked being with my dad because my dad's family were quite wealthy. So she didn't do what she really wanted to do, but she saw me living the life that I wanted to live, and she hated me for that. So she was trying to make it as hard as she possibly could. So yeah, we did it. We were in the hostel for like a couple of weeks until we could get the paperwork sorted out to like rent a house, but it wasn't fun. We were sharing a kitchen with some people that, they were drug addicts, and so there was like needles all over the kitchen counters and things like that. And I've got a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. So yeah, that was an experience, to say the least. But yeah,
And I'm going to guess that, like all of these stories, and I feel, I'm not going to sit here and say I've had all these traumas. I've been incredibly fortunate. I had loving parents, always had a place to live. You're right. I always had the basics. But in my own work life, I've been in places, my parents, as soon as I was grown up, they're like, right, you got to go and find your way. Screwed up at school, left with nothing, rebelled against authority, blah, blah, blah. Very similar story to a lot of other people's. But that saw me in some, pretty rubbish jobs, right? Where I was working nights and driving buses in the worst, scariest parts of London, trying to like make a few quid. But I'm glad that I went through that, because now where I am today, it really makes me appreciate a lot more what I've got today, right? Where I am, what I'm doing, running my businesses, right? Happy, healthy, fit, traveling, having fun with it, So I think if you don't have those really bad experiences, and no doubt now where you are, when you have a bad day, you can sit there and go, okay, I've had better days. But when I compare it to where I was just back then,
yeah,
I'm in a
and I have
good
no
place.
fear of failure, because to me it's like, well, I've hit rock bottom, I've been homeless, and I survived that. So I'm going to have a go at things. Yeah, I'm going to have a go at things. If they work out, great. If they don't, I'll figure out something else, and I'll be all right. I just need to keep being the loving, caring person I am, and just live the life I want to live, and do the things I want to do. And if it doesn't work out, okay, well, it's kind of like regroup and see what else will happen, and learn by my mistakes. And I don't tend to call them mistakes. I always think we either succeed or we learn, because then my brain is set up with like, okay, well, if you're going to succeed or fail, it's like your brain's going to go, oh no, hang on a minute, I don't want to go in case I fail. But actually, if I succeed, great. But when it doesn't work out as I planned and I learn something, then you reflect on it more, and you learn more, and you grow more from that. So I actually really like making mistakes, and I'll often do Facebook Lives about the mistakes I've made and talk about those, and it helps other people, because then I get people saying, oh, I feel so much better because I made a mistake and I was really beating myself up, but I'm going to stop doing that now because I can just learn from it. So it helps other people when I make mistakes.
Brooke, answer me this. How the hell can you succeed in life, in business or in anything, if you can't fail first, right?
Absolutely.
The only way that you're going to go through life without having failures, making mistakes, losing things, gaining it again, is if you don't try, right? When you think about it and you break it down like that, it's kind of a sledgehammer in the face moment. Okay, if I want to play it safe and I don't want to risk failing, that's fine. I'll stay in my nice, comfortable job where I'm unfulfilled. It doesn't serve me. I'm not where I want to be. I know I can do more. I know I'm capable of more, but I'm just going to play it safe. And that's the way it's going to be. But hey, at least I know I won't make any mistakes. Well, you already made the biggest mistake of your life by not trying.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's a ridiculous concept. The more you foul forward, right? You get up, dust yourself off, try again. And as long as you get comfortable with that, then you're going to keep getting closer to your goals. It's just inevitable.
Absolutely. But a lot of people are in that freeze and going back to trauma, in that fight or freeze of like, oh my goodness, like, if I tried that and failed, what will people think of me? Because they've grown up hearing that, don't do that. What will people think of you? And they're people pleasers and they don't want to upset their parents or their partner or whatever. So they stay in that stuck situation, and this is where I get really passionate about wanting to help people, because I believe that everybody is a diamond. They're just buried under layers of different beliefs and stories that they've inherited from other people. So I help them to pull back those layers to find out the diamond they are, to find out what they really want to be, the true them, and how they want to live their lives, and help them to live it by taking the action, by doing the failing.
It's really true. I mean, depending on how woo-woo you are or what you believe in, right? What's the odds of us being here? Like, I don't know, 50 trillion to 1, right? With the whole DNA genetic makeup or whatever. And I do believe that we're all here for a purpose, to do something great, to achieve something, to help people, whatever it is. And it's up to everybody to walk through enough doors and to try enough shit where eventually they're like, oh, I'm really good at this. This is what I'm going to focus on. This is where I'm going to excel. And you will find that people start turning around to you going, damn, you're really good at that. And you're like, oh, really? And then it kind of lifts you up, and then you start to find that purpose. But and I like what you do, and I completely understand why you get such a kick out of it. Now that we've got our coaching program with our service accommodation mentees, and one person I'm thinking of in particular, when we spoke about the lives, she's like, oh, I can't do it, and I don't want to do it, and no one cares, and da-da-da-da-da. Pushed her over the edge, right? She starts doing it, and almost immediately she starts getting floods of messages. Oh, that's awesome. Oh, I'm really inspired. Oh, can we get on a call? I could do with your help. Can I pick your brains? And she sent me a message. She's like, Alex, my inbox is blowing up. I don't know what to do. I'm like, yeah, because you're inspiring people by being honest and vulnerable and authentic and telling your wins and your failures, right? And people are starting to grow. And then it lifts the whole thing up. And then it's just like, the momentum begins. So it's really, really cool. Tell me, Brooke, about the details of what you're doing now and how you're helping people, because I want as many people who are listening to this as possible to reach out to you who are experiencing this stuff and get the help.
Yeah, like I said, as we sort of talked about before, I help people with their inner child and help them understand what their inner child is feeling. Somebody actually dubbed me the breakthrough queen, because I'm very quick at finding out what it is that's causing somebody to be stuck, what their inner child needs, and I help them to connect with their inner child. I do what's called somatic inner child reprogramming, and I do use a couple of other different things to help them to release those traumas that are trapped in their body, so they don't feel like, yes, my head wants to do this, you've got your head over here saying yes, let's do it, and your body going no, that's not going to happen, because your body will always win out. When you try and do something you really don't feel like it, you will either do it half-heartedly or not do it at all, or find something else to do, and you'll procrastinate, or you'll become a perfectionist at it. That's a different way of procrastinating. You'll self-sabotage it. You'll go into emotional eating. These are all protector parts that we've talked about before. But that's how I help people. I'm very open and vulnerable, as you've seen. And like we talked about, about your lady in a Facebook Live, when I wrote my book, I documented it, because I wrote it within 90 days. I documented it every day on Facebook, the ups and downs of writing my book, how I was feeling. And everybody felt that they came on a journey with me. And before my book was actually published, I had people messaging me saying, I've decided to start a business because if you can write a book in 90 days, I can step out and do that. I've decided to go for a promotion. People started writing their own book. And one person even said, I've decided to ask somebody out for a coffee date because I've been putting it up for months. But if you can write a book in 90 days, I can ask somebody out on a date. So it's my thing is I want to inspire people to take action, very similar to what you're doing. Start taking that action so that action starts feeling more like a normal way of life rather than oh my god, that's a big huge mountain to climb, I can't do that. So it's really thinking about, and I didn't write my book to become a multimillionaire or New York bestseller. I wrote it to inspire other people to think outside the box, to think, what can I achieve in 90 days, what could I do? If Brooke can do that, and I don't see myself as an exceptionally extraordinary person, I'm just a normal, everyday farmer's daughter type thing. If I can write and publish a book in 90 days, what can other people do? And that's what I want to inspire people to do. And I'm all about taking that action. It doesn't matter if you do it badly or you succeed, just take the action and learn from it and see where it'll go from there, because it'll be amazing the doors that open as you do that along the way.
What would you say, Brooke, to someone who's listening to this and they're in a situation that I was describing previously, where they're at home with a partner, couple of kids, they're not happy, they've got dreams, they've got desires, they've got this urge inside of them where they're like, they realize I've got this one life, right? And I want to do this. I've got this great business idea. And they go to their husband or their wife and that person says, come on, baby, let's get real here. Forget about those silly pipe dreams, go finish off the dinner and, let's watch Netflix or whatever. Just an example. Yeah. Right. And that person, because that's real, right? That's real life. That's what a lot of people are experiencing. And they know that potentially if they contact you and reach out and start working with you and you start digging into their soul and telling them that they can do this, they're going to be put in a position very quickly where they're like, shit, I now need to make this choice. And that in itself might stop them from reaching out, because that's a scary place to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I had people tell me for years that I needed therapy, and I'm like, no, I'm surviving just as I am. I'm fine. But it wasn't until I wanted to thrive that I actually sought out therapy and sought out help to deal with, because I didn't want to open that box, because I blocked out a lot of stuff in my childhood, because I couldn't deal with it. But it's realizing that there is help out there. You don't have to spend thousands and thousands of pounds. You can start by, listen to a podcast like this one, to get some ideas, to get some thoughts. Start looking on like social media, finding out the kind of people that are doing what you want to do. Start connecting with them, and I think Jim Rohn was a famous person that said we become like the 5 people we hang around with. Notice who you're hanging around with. Notice what you're saying to yourself, because you are capable as an adult to make the decisions for yourself, and you are responsible for it. It's not the partner that's responsible for it. It's you that's responsible for it. And that can be quite a hard-hitting thing to hear and to deal with, but we are responsible for our own lives.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so true. And, I would also say that, listen to people who are saying things, friends and family members, recurring things like, oh, haven't heard from you in a few weeks. What's going on? You seem a little bit distant. We haven't seen you at the sports events lately, or whatever it is. Because when you're with that person, that narcissist, right, they start to create this separation and this distance between you and everybody else in your life, because it comes back to a control thing. But what I found, that even though I was being told this stuff by people who are very close to me and people who I did start distancing myself from, when you don't understand it, when you're not educated on it, or you don't want to believe it, right, you start looking at those people and you start saying, what's your problem? What's it got to do with you? You start turning against those people instead of going, okay, hold on a minute. This isn't just my immediate mother and father's telling me these things. These are my friends that I've been friends with for my whole life that's starting to notice these changes. That's a big clue, because you can become blind to this stuff, right? And there's a lot of people living this life. Now that I'm opening the can, right, to this world, there's a lot of people that are living like this.
And
It's a
also,
really
people
scary
aren't going
thing.
to change until they're ready to change. Like I said, people told me for years, why you hang around with, having relationships with people like that? You need to get some therapy to get. And I'm like, no, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine, until I wasn't. And it's like, okay, I really need to get that help. But, we can say to people, we can see the potential in people until the cows come home. But until they see that potential in themselves and start listening to their own self-talk, they're not going to change and do what they need to do. And it can be frustrating as we watch on if we're their relative or their loved one or a friend of theirs, because we can see what they're going through. But until they can see it, I've kind of like knocked my head against the wall with so many people thinking, I know where they're going wrong. They can, if I could just get in there and talk to them. But, you're talking to a brick wall, you'd get more sense, because they don't want to hear it just then. They're not ready to hear it. And I wasn't. So I completely understand that. But it's noticing what you're saying to yourself and having your own boundaries with yourself as well, and having that self-leadership. That's what you need to think about. What do you really want? Because, especially as well, women are grown up to think, okay, we need to think about everybody else. Our children need to come first. Our partners need to come first. Our parents need to come first. But actually, no, we need to think about that analogy of, like, if you're in an aeroplane, you put your oxygen mask on first, make sure your cup's full up, and then you can help everybody else, including your children, which some people don't like to hear to start with, but it's true. If you make sure you're happy and you're contented, your children will have a better life anyway.
Yeah, so true. You've got to look after yourself first. When you succeed, when you're happy, whether that's in a financial sense or just, in your heart, then you can start to help everybody around you, right? But when you're in a dark place and you're just, it's just that toxic, dark, negative eggshells, arguments, sadness. I mean, the amount of, just thinking, like, the amount of arguing. And that was one of the things that I used to really grind on me the most. It was the wasted time. And I don't know, there's something that switched in me, I'm in my, early 40s, heading very quickly to my mid 40s. And I'm like, I'm not old, but I don't have any more time to waste. I don't have any more days to spend sitting in silence. I don't have any more days to waste screaming and shouting. I don't have any more days to waste walking down the street with my bags packed. I'm done with that shit. I want positivity. I want happiness. I want support. I want love. I want community. I want friendship. I want travel. I want experiences. I want all that, right? Because I don't want to be old looking back going, well, shit, why did I blow 10, 15 years on that toxic stuff that wasn't serving me? You literally just do not have the time.
Yeah.
And everybody needs to realize that and make
I take a
change.
leaf out of my dad's book with that, because he was very fit and healthy, and he didn't retire until he was 76. He was a farmer. He'd always worked out in the land and that. And he always said, I'm going to do this when I retire. I'm going to do that when I retire. He retired he was 76 in the December. He retired in the January, and he had a massive stroke and a brain bleed in the March. And he never did any of the things that he was putting off to wait to do. So from that time forward, I'm like, I'm not going to put anything off. I'm going to do the things. I'm going to have the experiences. I'm going to do the things I want to do, and I'm going to make sure I'm happy doing them.
Yeah, it's massive. We all presume, I'll just do it when I retire. What's that all about? All we have to do is look, for most of us, amongst our immediate friend circle, our family, and see that people are getting awful diseases and, non-curable diseases not when they're 80. This shit is happening in 50s and 60s. And it's very common, and it's only going to get more common because the shit that everybody's eating and the stress that we're putting ourselves under. So you got to work out what's important, what do I want, and how do I want to live this one life? Because it's over very, very quickly, and I'm not about to wait till I'm old to start enjoying it. And I also think that something else that just comes to mind, going back to the narcissism thing, is with one of the main things of narcissism being the gaslighting and being beaten down and told every day, well, you can't do this and forget about that, and just give up on your dreams. And that can stop you from having the confidence to make the break and to be by yourself, because you're just naturally, it sucks all the life and soul and confidence out of you. So do you think that that's something as well, that people are like, well, this sucks, but it's easier for me to just stay here than take the risk and be by myself, because that sounds equally as lonely.
Yeah, because what happens is we'll go back to we'll stay with what's familiar, even though it's not good for us, and we know it's not good for us. Like with, you know, when people have had a narcissistic parent, they often end up in narcissistic relationships because they're familiar with that way of life, even though it's not good for them, and they don't really enjoy it. But we'll kind of like gravitate to what's familiar rather than not go into the unknown, because our subconscious mind's like, well, we can't do that anyway because we've been told that all our lives, and it's not safe. So we'll just stay here where it's familiar. At least I know, it's kind of like the saying, better the devil you know than the devil you don't, sort of thing, because at least you know what's going to happen there and how you're going to be treated, which isn't going to be nice, but at least you're familiar with it. But it
Yeah.
is scary to step out and do the unknown things. I mean, I've walked out of jobs because I vowed to myself when I was little that once I become an adult, that if I'm not happy, I won't stay somewhere. You know, so I've walked out of jobs with nowhere to go, and no job lined up, but I've always found something else to do because I've decided that me being happy is going to be my priority.
Yeah. And I'm a big believer that when you say no, and I'm going to change, and I'm going to get better, and I'm going to grow, and the universe is like, hell yeah.
Yeah,
And they throw that,
absolutely.
they open that door, or they throw you that opportunity, and shit happens. The only time shit doesn't happen is when you're just playing it safe and you're pissed off and angry and, whatever.
Yeah, and it's
That's
like
when the
with
universe is like,
the law of attraction,
yeah,
I'm a big believer in it, but the main thing I believe in is that those last few letters of attraction is action. You need to take the action, you need to put it out there, and then you need to start doing something towards it. Like, for instance, if you think, okay, I want to leave this relationship, but I've got nowhere to go, okay, put it out there, see what you can do, research some things, talk to somebody, even if it's phoning up the Samaritans and talking to, if you've been isolated and got no friends, there
mm,
are always ways out of it. Even if it looks like there's no hope, there is always some hope, because if you put it out there to the universe, doors will open where you least expect them. Strangers are sometimes the most kindest people in your world when you are living that sort of life, and the people you least expect to come into your life and do something will be the big people that will help you out.
absolutely. Brooke, after all this, as we kind of start getting close to the end here, like I said, we could speak about this for weeks. It's a very deep topic, and it's very much in need. But after all this heaviness and sad stuff, you also travel now, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Tell us about that for a couple of minutes.
We've got a
Let's
camper
lighten the mood.
van. Yeah, we've got a camper van, and we love exploring all over the place. We're basically touring all around England. We want to make sure everywhere in England's been sort of kind of uncovered. And we live about 20 minutes away from Wales, so we love going into Wales, and just like sometimes on a Thursday night we'll say, right, let's go away for the weekend, and we'll go, okay, let's turn left, turn right, and just discover new places and stuff. So and we always
That's
get
so
great weather
awesome.
because we follow the sun.
I love that. Talk about full circle from where you was to now, just cruising around, with your partner in the camper van, happy,
Yeah.
laughing, having fun, chilled, relaxed, exactly as it should be. And I think that's just to reflect
It is
back.
possible. It's
Yeah.
like there is a possibility to get from wherever you are. And if any of your listeners are listening thinking, I'm feeling really like there's no way out, there is always a way out. And like I said to you before we started recording, if anybody would like to talk to me and it's like triggered something off in them, send me an email. I answer all my emails personally, and I answer every one of them. So, send me an email. We can jump on a call, have a complimentary call, have a chat. I can, help you out with some resources and see where we can go with that. So there is always somebody there that will help you out. You just need to actually start taking that action and looking for it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure there's a lot of people listening to this going, yeah, that's me. Yeah, that's me. Yeah, I feel that way. Yeah, I want to make the change. And, you know, I think it's amazing what you've done, Brooke, and, inspiring. I think it shows grit, determination, a willingness to live your best life, which I'm a big advocate for, which you're obviously doing now. And just to echo what you've said, I would implore anyone who is having these feelings, who feels trapped, who knows that they're in, you know, an abusive or a narcissistic relationship, whether it's with a partner or at work or with family members, you know, to reach out to Brooke, start that conversation, because there is always help out there. And I think what you're doing is amazing, just trying to serve as many people as you can and help people live their best life. So kudos to you.
Thank you.
Just to finish off, Brooke, one question that I like to ask all of my guests, and normally I say, oh, if I could just ask you to be a little bit vulnerable for a second, but I don't think I need to ask you that in this podcast. But big advocate for mental health. I've been there, anxiety, depression, self-esteem, low confidence, and all the rest of it. I know that most of the planet has as well, whether they talk about it or not. We're getting better with it, but we're still not talking about it enough. But I always say that sometimes listeners or viewers to this podcast might look at my guests and pedestalize them or say, well, it's okay for them and they're doing this and they're living their best life and they're making money and they've got businesses or whatever. But I know that, as we've just spoken about, you've gone through absolute hell to get to where you are today. But I want to ask you in this minute, with where you are, what you're doing, who you're with, and everything that's happened in your life leading up to this moment, today, this minute, are you happy?
Absolutely. Yes, because I purposely created the life that I wanted to live. I live in a gorgeous home that I want to live at in the country, right by the woods, you know, living with a very supportive partner, husband. I've got my 4 children, 9 grandchildren, and a golden Labrador puppy, which is, you know, great, you know. So yeah, God. I've lived the life I've created because I was determined, because I can remember when I was 7 looking up at the sky saying, I don't know why you've put me with this woman, but there must be a reason. Just let me know so I can get on with a purpose in life. And I've found that purpose in life. And I love how seeing that light bulb moment going off in people's eyes, realizing that there is a way out, that they can change, they can have the life they want, is priceless to me.
Love it. I love that. It gets me all fired up. I want a Labrador. My dream dog. I love dogs, and I'm waiting to get to a place where I'm not traveling all over the place constantly, which may never happen. But where the first thing I'm going to do is get a black lab. That's my dream dog. So,
yeah, I had a black lab. He was 12 and a half and he passed away, and it took us 6 years to get another one. And we've got a puppy who's 2 now. But yeah, it's a golden lab. I couldn't have a black one again after losing my black one. But yeah, I've got a golden lab now. He's very weird and very strange and very, very him, which is all good. So yeah.
Great place to finish up. Brooke,
Absolutely.
we're going to get all of Brooke's information, every single bit. We're going to get information about your book as well, which is a great place for maybe people to start if they want to, you know, look into you and see if your stuff resonates with them. All of that information we're going to put in the show notes so you can reach out directly to Brooke. And hopefully, if you're feeling like any of this resonates with you, get booked onto that complimentary call, right? There's only good that can come from it. Brooke, I think you're amazing. It's amazing what you're doing. It's amazing what you've achieved. And thank you so much for joining me on the Airbnb Nomads podcast. And thanks to everybody for listening and watching at home. And we'll see you all again next week on the Airbnb Nomads podcast. Brooke Bownes, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I've enjoyed it.